The mirror in my grandmother's house had always unnerved me. It hung in the hallway, large and ornate, with a gilded frame decorated with twisted vines and strange, grotesque faces. As a child, I avoided it, convinced that the eyes in those carved faces moved when I wasn't looking. My grandmother called it the family heirloom, though she rarely spoke of its origins. When I asked where it came from, she would only mutter, "The less you know about it, the better." She never elaborated, and I never pressed her until I inherited the house. I didn't want the mirror. In fact, I intended to get rid of it immediately, but the movers refused to touch it. "It's too fragile," one of them said, though his eyes darted nervously toward the reflective surface. So it stayed. The first time I heard it was a few weeks after I moved in. I was walking down the hallway late at night, heading to the kitchen for a glass of water. The house was quiet, save for the creaks of old wood settling. As I passed the mirror, a soft sound caught my ear, a faint whisper. I froze, my heart pounding. "Hello," I called out, turning to look behind me. The hallway was empty. Then, I realized the sound hadn't come from behind me. It had come from the mirror. I stepped closer, my reflection staring back at me with wide, frightened eyes. The whisper came again, clearer this time. A soft, raspy voice murmuring words I couldn't quite make out. I leaned in, pressing my ear closer to the cold glass. "Listen, help!" I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. My pulse thundered in my ears as I stared at the mirror, expecting something, anything, to emerge from it. But nothing happened. The next morning, I called my friend Emma. She was the kind of person who believed in all things paranormal. Ghosts, spirits, cursed objects. If anyone would take me seriously, it was her. After I explained what happened, she was silent for a long moment. "You didn't talk back, did you?" she finally asked. "No," I said, though the truth was, I'd come dangerously close. "Good. Don't. Mirrors are like gateways. If something's whispering to you, it's trying to draw you in. Draw me in? To its side," Emma said, "or bring itself to yours. Either way, it's bad news." I laughed nervously, trying to brush off her words. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that she might be right. That night, the whispers grew louder. I was lying in bed when I heard them, soft and insistent, calling my name. I threw the covers off and marched into the hallway, determined to face whatever was happening. The mirror gleamed in the dim light, its surface unnaturally clear. As I approached, the whispers stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the glass rippled, as though it were water disturbed by a breeze. A face appeared. It wasn't mine. The face was pale and gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to peer straight through me. Its lips moved, forming silent words, and then the whispers returned, louder and more urgent. "Let me out," the voice said. "Please help me." The next day, I decided to search the house for answers. If the mirror was connected to something or someone, I needed to know. In the attic, I found a dusty box filled with old photographs, letters, and a leather-bound journal. The journal belonged to my great-grandmother, Clara, and its pages were filled with meticulous handwriting. One entry caught my eye. March 3rd, 1927. The mirror arrived today, a gift from the merchant who visited last month. He said it was made by a master craftsman, one who imbued his work with a touch of the otherworldly. I feel uneasy having it here, but it is beautiful, and Henry insists we keep it. As I read further, Clara's entries grew darker. April 12th, 1927. Henry swears he heard voices coming from the mirror. I laughed it off, but now I hear them too. They whispered to me at night, calling my name. Henry says we mustn't respond, but it's so hard to ignore. May 20th, 1927. Something is wrong. Henry is gone. The last time I saw him, he was staring into the mirror, talking to it. I begged him to stop, but he wouldn't listen. Now, I fear the whispers are coming for me. That evening, I stood before the mirror, clutching Clara's journal in my trembling hands. The whispers had returned, more insistent than ever. "Let me out," the voice pleaded. I gritted my teeth, trying to block it out. But the voice grew louder, overlapping with others until it became a cacophony of desperate cries. I wanted to believe Emma, to trust that responding would be a mistake. But Clara's words haunted me. Henry is gone? What if I could help? What if the voice belonged to someone trapped? Someone who needed saving? Before I could stop myself, I spoke. What do you want? The whispers fell silent. For a moment, the hallway was still, and I thought I'd made a mistake. Then, the mirror rippled again, and the face reappeared. Thank you, it said, a sinister smile spreading across its pale lips. Now let me in. I stood frozen, staring at the face in the mirror. Its hollow eyes glinted with something uncomfortably close to triumph. Let me in, the voice repeated, softer now, almost gentle. My throat was dry. What are you? The face didn't answer directly. Instead, the surface of the mirror shimmered like water under moonlight. I reached out instinctively, my fingertips brushing against the cold glass. The whispers returned, faint and beckoning, weaving a melody of temptation and dread. Before I could react, the glass grew warmer beneath my touch, almost burning. I snatched my hand back as a spider web of cracks spread across the surface, distorting the face into a grotesque mask. A faint chuckle echoed in the hallway, low and chilling. The cracks sealed themselves just as quickly as they had appeared, leaving the mirror pristine once more. Soon, the voice whispered, and then it was gone. The next few days passed in a blur of unease. The house felt different, heavier, as though the air itself was charged with some unseen energy. Shadows lingered longer than they should, and the faint scent of something metallic began to permeate the air. The mirror, however, remained silent. I should have felt relieved, but the absence of whispers only heightened my paranoia. Every time I passed the mirror, I felt its presence like a predator waiting in the dark. Emma called to check in, sensing my anxiety. I debated telling her about my slip-up, about speaking to the whispers, but guilt kept my lips sealed. You're not listening to it, are you? She asked, her voice sharp. No, I lied. Good. Mirrors are tricky. They're not just reflections, they're doorways. If something's trying to get through, it needs permission. Don't give it that. Her words clung to me, even as I hung up the phone. That night, I woke to the sound of footsteps. They were slow and deliberate, echoing down the hallway outside my bedroom. I sat up, heart pounding, straining to hear more. The footsteps stopped, replaced by a faint tapping. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the hallway and from the direction of the mirror. I grabbed my phone and crept to the door, opening it just enough to peek out. The hallway was shrouded in darkness, but the mirror gleamed faintly in the moonlight streaming through the window. The tapping grew louder. I stepped out, clutching my phone like a weapon, and approached the mirror. My reflection stared back at me, pale and frightened, but otherwise normal. Then I saw it, a shadow, faint but unmistakable, moving behind me. I spun around, but the hallway was empty. When I turned back to the mirror, my reflection was gone. Desperation drove me back to the attic. I tore through the box of Clara's belongings, searching for anything I might have missed. At the bottom of the box, I found a folded piece of paper tucked inside the journal. It was a letter addressed to no one in particular. If you're reading this, it means the mirror has chosen you. I'm sorry. I've tried everything to destroy it, to banish the thing inside, but it's too powerful. The best I can do is warn you. Never respond to the whispers. It feeds on acknowledgement, grows stronger with every word you give it. And if it smiles, the letter ended abruptly. The ink smudged as though Clara's hand had trembled while writing. The next time I saw the face in the mirror, it was grinning. I'd been avoiding the hallway, only venturing near the mirror during the day when sunlight seemed to dull its presence. But as I passed by on my way to the kitchen, I felt an irresistible pull, as though invisible strings were guiding me closer. The face appeared before I even stopped to look. Its smile was too wide, stretching unnaturally across its pallid skin. You let me in, it said, its voice a sickly sing-song. No, I didn't, I whispered, my voice trembling. Oh, but you did, it crooned. You spoke to me. You broke the barrier. Now, I can come and go as I please. I backed away, shaking my head. That's not possible. The face leaned closer, pressing against the glass as though it might push through. Its grin widened, revealing rows of jagged, yellowed teeth. Shall I show you? The hallway lights flickered, and for a moment, the world seemed to tilt. When the lights stabilized, the face was gone, but the whispers lingered, swirling around me like a sinister chorus. I finally broke down and told Emma everything. She listened in silence, and when I finished, she let out a string of expletives. "You talked to it?" she exclaimed. "Why the hell would you do that?" "I didn't mean to," I said. "It was just, I thought it needed help." Of course it sounded like it needed help. That's how these things work. It's a trick. Emma insisted on coming over, armed with sage, salt, and a bundle of crystals. She claimed they would help cleanse the house and keep the entity at bay. We started in the hallway. Emma sprinkled salt along the baseboards and waved the smoking sage stick in front of the mirror. At first, nothing happened. Then, the mirror's surface began to ripple. "Keep going," I urged, my voice tight with fear. Emma muttered a chant under her breath, her hand steady as she moved the sage closer to the glass. The ripples grew more violent, and a low growl echoed from within the mirror. Suddenly, the face reappeared, its grin replaced by a snarl. "You can't stop me," it hissed. "You're already mine." The lights flickered again, and the growl deepened, reverberating through the house. Emma dropped the sage, grabbing my arm. "We need to leave," she said, her voice shaking. As we ran, the whispers followed us, louder and more menacing than ever. Emma and I fled the house, herding ourselves into my car. The whispers seemed to grow fainter the further we drove, fading into the background like a bad memory. I parked at a nearby diner, its neon sign casting long shadows on the asphalt. "What now?" I asked, my voice hollow. Emma rubbed her temples, staring blankly at her untouched coffee. "It's attached to the mirror. Destroying it might break the connection. But if we mess this up, it could get worse." "Worse than this?" I snapped, my frustration boiling over. "It's already everywhere. I feel it in the walls, the air." Emma raised her hand to silence me. "I know. That's why we can't rush. These things follow rules. If we break the wrong one..." She didn't need to finish her sentence. Emma spent hours researching while I sat helplessly beside her. We pored over occult forums, old books she brought, and even a few handwritten notes passed down from her grandmother. Finally, Emma found something. "There's a ritual," she said, flipping through pages stained with coffee and age. "It's risky, but it might work." "What's the catch?" Emma hesitated, chewing her lip. "You'll have to confront it directly. The mirror is a gateway. It doesn't just reflect. It houses the entity, and the ritual forces it into the open." My stomach turned. "Into the open? Like here?" "Sort of. It'll appear in the mirror. But if you mess up..." She trailed off, her eyes dark with worry. "Let's just say it won't stay confined for long." I swallowed hard. "Let's do it." We returned to the house just before midnight, the air thick with tension. The mirror gleamed ominously in the hallway, its surface unnaturally clean despite the dust and grime around it. Emma laid out her tools: salt, black candles, and a small iron dagger. She drew a circle of salt around the mirror, muttering incantations under her breath. "Stay inside the circle," she warned. "No matter what you see or hear, don't step out." I nodded, clutching the dagger like a lifeline. As the candles flickered to life, the whispers returned, louder than ever. They slithered through the air, speaking in tongues I couldn't understand. Emma began the ritual, her voice steady despite the growing chaos. The mirror's surface rippled like water, and the air grew colder. Then it appeared. The face pressed against the glass, its features sharper and more grotesque than before. Its smile was gone, replaced by a look of raw hatred. "You think you can banish me?" it hissed, its voice layered with malice. Emma ignored it, continuing her chant. The candles flared, their flames unnaturally high, casting twisted shadows on the walls. The entity's reflection began to distort, its form stretching and twisting like melted wax. Its voice grew louder, a cacophony of screams and growls. "Stop!" it roared, its tone commanding. "You don't know what you're doing." I tightened my grip on the dagger, resisting the urge to look away. Suddenly, the glass began to crack, thin fissures spreading outward like veins. The whispers turned into screams, and the temperature dropped sharply, my breath visible in the icy air. "Finish it!" I shouted to Emma. She raised her voice, the chant reaching a crescendo. The entity thrashed within the mirror, its form breaking apart like shards of black glass. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, the mirror exploded. The force knocked us both to the ground, shards of glass raining down like deadly confetti. The salt circle dissolved, and the whispers roared back to life, louder than ever. The entity was free. It didn't take long for it to make its presence known. The shadows in the room twisted unnaturally, pooling together into a vaguely humanoid form. Its eyes glowed a sickly yellow, and its smile returned, wider, sharper, and more menacing. "Did you really think you could trap me?" it sneered, its voice a mix of amusement and contempt. Emma scrambled to her feet, clutching a handful of salt. She hurled it at the entity, but it dissolved before it could touch the shadowy figure. The entity laughed, the sound echoing unnaturally. "You've made a terrible mistake." Before we could react, the entity reached out, its shadowy hand brushing against the wall. The room began to twist and warp, the familiar walls stretching into an endless corridor of mirrors. Each mirror reflected not just our images, but distorted versions of us. Emma with hollow eyes, me with a mouth twisted into a permanent scream. "Welcome to my world," the entity said, its grin widening. Emma grabbed my arm, her face pale. "This isn't real. It's trying to break us." I nodded, but the weight of the entity's gaze made it hard to breathe. "Let's play a game," it said, its voice dripping with mockery. "Find the real exit, and I might let you go. Fail, and you'll stay here forever." Before we could protest, the entity vanished, leaving us alone in the endless hall of mirrors. We moved quickly, our reflections following us with eerie precision. Some of them whispered, their voices faint but sinister. "Don't listen to them," Emma warned, her grip on my arm tightening. We tried door after door, but each one led back to the same hallway. The mirrors seemed to grow closer, their surfaces rippling with every step. Finally, we came across a door that felt different. It was smaller, almost hidden in the shadows. "This has to be it," I said, my voice shaking. Emma hesitated, her eyes scanning the surrounding mirrors. "Wait, something feels off." Before I could argue, the door swung open on its own. Inside was another mirror, but this one wasn't reflective. Its surface was black, swirling with an ominous energy. "It's a trap," Emma said, pulling me back. The entity's laughter echoed from all around us. "Come now," it cooed. "Don't you want to see what's on the other side?" The black mirror pulsed, and for a moment I saw something. Images of people, places, all trapped in a swirling vortex of shadows. "Don't look at it," Emma shouted, but it was too late. I felt the pull, stronger than anything I'd experienced before, dragging me toward the mirror. The pull of the black mirror was overwhelming, like invisible hands reaching through the void to drag me forward. Emma's grip on my arm tightened as she struggled to hold me back. "Don't give in," she yelled, her voice cutting through the entity's laughter. But the vortex had a will of its own. My feet skidded across the warped floor as I fought against its pull. Shadows seeped out from the black mirror, curling around my legs like living vines. Emma grabbed the iron dagger from her belt, slashing at the tendrils. They recoiled, hissing, but the mirror pulsed in response, unleashing a wave of energy that knocked us both to the ground. "I can't hold it," I shouted, feeling myself being dragged closer. Emma's eyes darted between me and the mirror, desperation etched across her face. Finally, she made a decision. "I'm coming with you," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. Before I could protest, she reached out, grabbing my hand. Together, we plunged into the black mirror. The world beyond the mirror was a nightmare come to life. We stood in an endless void, the ground beneath us an unsteady mass of swirling shadows. Above, a sky of roiling darkness stretched infinitely, broken only by flashes of sickly yellow light. "We shouldn't be here," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible over the oppressive silence. The entity's laughter returned, echoing from every direction. "You've finally joined me," it said, its voice dripping with satisfaction. It materialized in front of us, its form even more monstrous in this realm. Its glowing eyes bore into us, and its grin stretched impossibly wide. "This is my domain," it said, spreading its shadowy arms. "You cannot escape." Emma stepped forward, defiance burning in her eyes. "We didn't come here to run. We came to end this." The entity tilted its head, its grin faltering for a moment. "Bold words," it said, its voice colder now. "But do you even know what you're up against?" Emma didn't respond. Instead, she reached into her bag, pulling out the remaining salt and the iron dagger. The entity hissed, its form rippling with anger. "Those trinkets won't save you here." "We'll see about that," Emma muttered. She began to chant, her voice steady despite the oppressive weight of the entity's presence. The shadows around us writhed, reacting to her words. The entity lunged, its form stretching and twisting as it tried to reach her. I stepped in front of it, holding the dagger out like a shield. "Stay back," I shouted, though my voice shook with fear. To my surprise, the entity hesitated, its eyes narrowing at the blade. Emma's chant grew louder, the air around us crackling with energy. The shadows beneath our feet began to dissolve, revealing a faint light in the distance. "What are you doing?" the entity roared, its voice shaking the void. Emma didn't answer. She thrust the dagger into the ground, and the light grew brighter, spreading outward like ripples on water. The entity screamed, its form unraveling as the light touched it. "You think you've won?" it hissed, its voice fading. "This isn't over. I'll always be watching." With one final scream, the entity exploded into a cloud of darkness, which was quickly consumed by the spreading light. The next thing I knew, we were back in the house. The hallway was intact, the mirrors shattered into harmless shards. Emma collapsed to her knees, her breathing ragged. "It's over," she whispered, though her voice carried little conviction. I wanted to believe her, but something felt off. The air was too still, the silence too heavy. "Do you think it's really gone?" I asked. Emma looked at me, her eyes tired but determined. "We did what we could. If it comes back," she trailed off, shaking her head. "We'll be ready." In the days that followed, life seemed to return to normal. The whispers were gone, and the oppressive feeling in the house had lifted. But at night, when the world was quiet, I sometimes thought I saw something. Shadows that lingered a little too long, reflections that didn't quite match. And once, just as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard it. A faint whisper. "Did you really think you could escape me?"